generators, and the barrier will fall?
A small section, yes.
Good enough. Johnson, drop the chief at the first generator, then head to the third. The elites will punch right down the middle.
Roger that.
Charlie, Foxtrot. Tower 1 approach has active AAA.
Mayday! I can't control her!
Pelican down! Pelican down!
Brace yourselves, we're going in a little hot!
In my opinion, the Covenant is Halo's best mission. It takes players through an intense and twisting story, interesting enemy encounters, and uses a variety of tools from Halo's sandbox. I'll be discussing why I believe it's so brilliant, but before I do, let's look at some honourable mentions, because this opinion is subjective.
This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it, so it must lead somewhere.
Brute ships, staggered line. Shipmaster, they outnumber us 3-1.
Then it is an even fight.
All cruisers fire at will. Burn their mongrel hides.
The island has multiple structures and installations. One of them contains the map room.
We're approaching the LZ. It's gonna be hot. Get set to come out swinging. Touchdown! Hit it, Marines! Go, go, go!
Could we possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
Tell him to make it count.
And I sure as hell don't like you. But if we don't do something, Mr. Mohawk's gonna activate this ring, and we're all gonna die.
Tartarus has locked himself inside the control room.
Well, I just happen to have a key. Come on, grab a banshee and give me some cover. Gonna know what's coming.
With that out of the way, let's begin. The mission is simple. Stop the Prophet of Truth from firing all the Halo rings. Truth has enclosed himself within a defensive barrier, and disabling this barrier takes up the first 2 acts of the mission. Right at the start, the objective for the player is made clear.
We hit these 3 generators, and the barrier will fall?
A small section, yes.
Good enough. Johnson, drop the chief at the first generator, then head to the third. The elites will punch right down the middle.
Roger that.
Already the player knows what to do and what their allies are doing. On paper, it's a clear plan, but from the beginning, problems arise. One of your 2 pelicans gets taken out, and the landing zone is crawling with enemies. This section reminds me of the opening to the now famous mission, the Silent Cartographer from Halo CE. Both missions encourage the player to aggressively push enemy defenses from the start. Bungie placed their AI in a way that left spaces between them and the player, and it entices the player to move into those spaces. After defeating the infantry and destroying the anti-air raid, a pelican drops in a warhog and mongoose, and you make your way towards the first tower. You follow a linear path before being greeted with an open area. This is a classic Halo environment, with multiple options presented to the player to overcome the defenses. Giving your Marines powerful weapons here can make a difference. Once inside the structure, you need to battle your way to the top. Halo 3 effectively removed the idea of boss battles from Halo 2, but this is the first of 3 encounters that almost resembles a boss battle. On harder difficulties, you really have to get creative here, as there are limited supplies. After defeating all opponents, you shut down the tower. The Arbiter and his elites get the second tower. However, Sergeant Johnson has failed to shut down the third tower and is not responding to his radio. With the third tower still online, the Chief must link up with the Arbiter to disable it. Hornets are on standby at the beach and, if I'm honest, this is the weakest part of the mission. It's at least a 30-second drive from the first tower back to the beach, and these are seconds where the player is simply driving with no dialogue or interesting moments to distract them. Perhaps the Arbiter could have radioed in, warning about the defences of the third tower, or maybe you would have to fend off some Banshee attacks on your journey. Nonetheless, you board a Hornet and take off on your way towards the third tower. Act 2 revolves around the tower itself. The Covenant are heavily defending it, using infantry and air and land vehicles. Once you have cleared the landing zone, you are joined by the Arbiter and his elites. After once again fighting your way to the top, you are presented with your second boss battle. Win that, lower the shield, and you will be finished.
Now, Prophet, your end has come.
High Charity. By the gods, brace for impact!
As with many aspects of this mission, things don't go according to plan. High Charity crash lands on the Ark, damaging the Shadow of Intent in the process, and unleashing the Flood. The only way to stop Truth now is through an all-out ground assault. The pressure is on, and Chief alongside his fellow Marines, and the Arbiter with his elites, must carve through the Covenant defences and breach the Citadel.
Citadel in sight! Troops are mobilizing everything they've got.
After a linear Scorpion section, the player is offered the choice to hop back into a Hornet and fly across to the Citadel. However, there is a problem, or rather, 2 problems.
I count 2 Scarabs! Repeat, 2 Scarabs!
Taking down both Scarabs is not an easy task. Damaging and landing on one, whilst avoiding the other, is hard to balance. And there are multiple Banshees, Prowlers and Ghosts in the vicinity, not to mention the infantry on the Scarabs. They can be taken down without a Hornet, but the Scorpion isn't exactly the most versatile vehicle. Once they are gone, proceed to the Citadel and a long cutscene will play. To summarise, Truth captured Sergeant Johnson because he needed a human to activate the rings. Miranda Keyes attempted to save him and got killed in the process. And the Flood are now willing to fight alongside you in order to stop Truth. Now that's a surprise. The final section is indoors, but fighting with the Flood is quite unique. You kill enemies and watch the Flood spores convert them. Eventually you overrun the Covenant and confront Truth. The Arbiter executes him, but the Flood has now turned on you, and you have to escape the structure as it is now swarming with enemies.
We trade one villain for another.
The mission ends with the reveal that the Ark has been forging a Halo ring, a replacement for the ring that was destroyed in Halo CE. In order to eradicate the Flood, Chief and the Arbiter decide to light it. But of course, Cortana has the activation index, which leads to the next mission. Firstly, I want to look at the plot structure of the Covenant. I mentioned the 3 acts before, and that is because the mission resembles a typical 3-act story. It's not absolute, there are no inciting incidents, and there's not too much character development. But have a look at this graph I quickly put together. The line depicts the amount of tension, and you can see it rises and falls like a typical story. Not many Halo missions, or missions from most games, can produce a level that could almost be a mini story within the larger narrative. Secondly, the variety in the Covenant is unmatched. At the beach you are fighting standard infantry, alongside an anti-air raid, shade turrets, and a brute equipped with a fuel rod cannon. Next, you are in either a warhog or mongoose and are fighting ghosts and a raid. You make your way inside to find more infantry, but at the top floor is our first of 3 boss battles, with a brute squad and chieftain with a gravity hammer. He has the ability to be temporarily invincible. After that, you are introduced to the Hornet section, where you are battling banshees, phantoms, and more anti-air raids and shade turrets. Before making your way to the top of the 3rd tower, you must defeat some hunters and a swarm of drones. The second boss battle consists of an invisible brute squad and a leader with a plasma turret. The brutes drop firebomb grenades here, which are useful for when the flood arrives. The next section is with a scorpion or goshawk, and you fight through various infantry and vehicles. Then the 2 scarabs arrive, and this is our final boss battle. You will more than likely destroy them using your Hornet. Once inside, you fight alongside the Covenant, and pushing forward is made difficult because the Covenant have grunts with fuel rod cannons placed at the end of the walkway. And finally, you battle the flood whilst escaping, and the mission is over. Just look at the array of encounters you have experienced. As soon as Bungie introduces a new type of encounter, it's gone before the novelty wears away. Of course, most encounters can be fought in multiple different ways. For example, whilst playing on Heroic, I took out the Wraiths, Ghosts and Prowlers at the 1st tower using my Spartan laser and a beam rifle. However, on my normal playthrough, I simply let my Warhog gunner clear the area. It's these types of choices that ensure replayability is possible. Finally, I want to discuss the tone the mission sets. There's only one word to describe it: epic. As ever, Marty O'Donnell does wonders with his score, really emphasising the urgency and gravity of the situation, whilst letting the player know that they are still in control. Set pieces are used brilliantly here, from the intro, to the Hornet section, to the tank section, and then the battle outside the Citadel. It's also the longest mission in Halo 3, and sits alongside the Ark as the largest mission. This is the Covenant's last stand, and the battles truly feel big enough to warrant that description. To summarise, the Covenant is an excellent level, with unique enemy encounters, epic set pieces, and a story structure that mirrors the full campaign. It doesn't innovate on other Halo missions, but it doesn't need to. It absolutely nails the typical formula it is based on. It may not be everyone's best mission, but for me, there's nothing better.